I didn't go to film school and or do any kind of media courses. I actually studied history, which for me, I guess my first experience is less in filmmaking, but it was more in storytelling. And for me, history very much is about storytelling, but it's just, you know, about the past and kind of working out, you know, events, what's important, kind of doing that. And then I actually went and did a postgrad in print journalism. And it was while I was doing that that I realized, I mean, I enjoyed writing, but I felt when I was meeting people that I wanted to capture them in a different way and perhaps, I guess, in simple terms, sort of thought more in pictures than I did kind of in words, in a sense. And so I started working as a researcher for a documentary production company for television, and that's where it began. And then I was sort of trying to come up with ideas for sort of, you know, like, you know, television shows and things like that. They were really terrible ones. But started working on production in documentaries. I think the first one was called The Real Dad's Army, which was about the Home Guard, and then sort of became an assistant producer, then a producer, and then started directing and directed my first film, which was for Channel 4. They had a strand called First Cut, which was back in, and that was in 2007. Over the last sort of 10 years, I've worked in television documentaries, and I was asked to meet the family for a potential project that a broadcaster was interested in, more looking at teenagers and autism, because there's a number of siblings in the family on the spectrum. And I met this family, we did a little bit of filming. That project didn't happen for various reasons. You know, broadcaster decided not to. But I felt that I'd sort of met this family that was sort of chaotic, loving, dynamic. There was so much going on there. I soon came to learn about their experiences and what they'd been through, and felt that I guess I didn't know what the film was, I didn't know what the story was, but this was a very special place, and these were very special people. They were each so articulate in different ways that kind of felt compelled, you know, to see if we could create something. So we spoke about continuing filming, and kind of began a journey that then went on for, you know, for 4 years before we, you know, arrived at the film. Kingdom of Us, it's a film about 7 siblings and their mother, and they lost their father to suicide, and it's filmed over 3 years as they grow up, sort of piece together their memories from the past and then look to the future. It's very much, it's about grief and loss, but also the sort of strength of family bonds and resilience. The subject matter and the story are, I mean, it's incredibly personal, and it's sort of incredibly sort of sensitive. And I think that when in filming a film like that as well, you know, how you work within your relationship with the people that you're filming with is just everything. And building that trust and that respect is really important. I mean, the family are incredibly brave in being so open about their feelings, and you're always reevaluating as a filmmaker whether you should be there, you shouldn't be there, how you're, you know, using that material. So I think, I mean, over time, I mean, family and I, you know, we're friends, you know, and it's like any other relationship with somebody that you know, as you get to know them, that trust builds as well. I always worked in a way that were largely the majority of the filming, other than a few shoots with a cinematographer to do more stylized stuff. It's just me and a camera, so there's no sound person, and that creates that feeling of intimacy. Initially, that came out of simply we didn't have any funding, and so, I mean, it was sort of 2 years before any substantial funding came in, by which point bringing somebody else didn't feel right, because we kind of had got, you know, used to the way that we were working. So that creates that intimacy. And also, I always had with the family, there's always a difference between what you film and what you show. And anything that they didn't want to be in the film wouldn't be in the film. So that can help to kind of, people feel that they don't need to sort of veto themselves. I think also, if you're making something which is observational and longitudinal, which is following the ebbs and flows of life, that, I mean, you're not even sure whether something's important then, and they aren't too, and there can be moments of intense vulnerability that can feel difficult, but when that changes 6 months later, you can only see the strength if you've seen the vulnerability. So then they also understand why that's important as well. I mean, the family are all very open, and in early conversations, you know, I learned quite a lot, and then you did learn things over time. I mean, what felt important to me, that I had sort of fallen in love with this family in the present and who they were, and wanted the film to be an observational film at its heart. They have a very strong retrospective story in terms of what has happened and what happened around their father. It could be easy to let that dominate, to sort of plot out your film and have talking heads and use the archive and just do that, but it felt like the more interesting and the truer film that was there was about growing up, and how the evolution of memory and how that shifts and changed. And so when we learn about things, they're often triggered by something that's happening in the present. I mean, there's lots of things that I wouldn't have filmed had they not been happening now. And there's lots that we don't know about in the film as well, that's simply not there because there wasn't sort of a present scene that kind of triggered that. So it was trying to kind of keep it, organic. So it was me with the family, which is something that I wouldn't wholeheartedly recommend, because with 8 people recording sound by yourself in a house they have 8 cats and 2 dogs and really noisy kitchen appliances, and Friends is always on the TV, and all, there's just, the mix took a while. There was just a cinematographer, Charlie Goodger, who came up on maybe 4 different occasions to film the landscape. The house was a sort of important character in the film as well, that had sort of witnessed this kind of change over time, and carried so many of their memories. So we're working with him, so there was just the one DOP, and then the producer, Julia Nottingham, then the editing team had Michael Agland, worked with him initially, for the majority of the edit, and he's just wonderful at using archive and sort of pouring through the enormous amount of rushes. Then we got to a stage where we brought in Maya Maffioli to sort of give a pair of fresh eyes, and Jinx Godfrey was a consultant editor at the end. But it was a very sort of small team. One of the good things, I mean, this is my first feature, and I didn't set about to make a feature. It was sort of no intentional decision. Simply, broadcasters weren't interested in the story, and I felt it was important to tell. And so it evolved that way. And I mean, it was when Julia from Pulse Films came on board, maybe a year afterwards, that she really said, look, there's feature potential here, and sort of encouraged me and my vision, and to have greater ambitions for it, that happened. But it was all kind of very organic, and with the family we didn't know if it would go anywhere. It was just years, and I thank them for their patience as well, because I remember in one of the Q&As around the premiere, Nikita, one of the siblings, she was saying that sometimes when I come up for filming, she wasn't really in the mood, and she, it's like, I didn't really fancy that day. And she said, oh, if I knew it was going to be on Netflix, then I really would have. And it's really great that we didn't know what would happen to it, and there was no sort of expectation there. And I think that that's important for it to, to feel authentic and real as well. Through making this film, I've really learned that you don't need permission to do something or create something. You don't sort of wait for someone to give you validation or to say, yes, this is a good story, or yes, you should do this. Kind of just go out there and try to do it. I think that it's really kind of given me kind of confidence in sort of trusting in my instinct, and if you really feel something, that then it's there.